Shurima rise. Hello everyone, and welcome to League of Lore. In today's episode, we will be going over the history of ancient Shurima. Let's jump right in. Shurima was an ancient empire amidst a vast sprawling desert. It was at one time the largest empire in the world, and shares close parallels to the real world's Egyptian empire. The capital of the Shuriman Empire was Shurima. Imagine that, right? It was a bustling city, the center of all trade, culture, and politics. Originally a land of many individual city-states, none could stop the armies of Shurima, as they and their rich, power-hungry emperor conquered all. And who could stop them? They were people favored by literal demigods known as the Ascended, and built around the sun disk, an ancient construct of immense magical power. Though none are sure of its origins, I suspect it to be powered by a world ruin, whose power may have connections to the fall of one of its many vassal states, Acacia. But that's for another video. The city even had a magical oasis known as the Oasis of Dawn, which supplied the city with fresh water and was known to have powerful healing properties that could even bring people back from near death, as well as the ability to enforce weapons merely by dipping them within its water. So how did the empire that had everything going for it and no one who could stop them come crumbling down to dust? Or sand, rather? It all comes down to one question. Who would win in a fight? The most powerful empire in the world, defended by ascended gods of war, or one lightning boy? Not getting the answer? Well, let me elaborate. Well, it all starts with the story of the bird god himself, Azir, the Emperor of the Sands. But at the time, he was merely the mortal son of the Emperor, and even though that may sound like he was still pretty important, he wasn't. He was the youngest and least favored son of the Emperor. The only way this guy gets the throne is if some assassins just swoop in and murder all of his brothers. I mean, what are the chances of something like that? Let's move on. In comes Zareth, the Magus Ascended. But as with Azir, at the time, he was a person of little importance, even more so actually. He was simply the son of captured scholars, destined to be nothing but a slave for his entire life. He didn't even have a name. He was, however, fortunate enough to have his parents teach him mathematics, how to read, and even history. He was certainly a step ahead of every other slave in Shurima, but yet he was still a slave. His father died being crippled while working on a monument to the Emperor's favorite horse, and being only a slave, was left to die on sight. This prompts his mother to have young Zareth be taken as an apprentice to an architect, who fortunately takes him on as Zareth was quite educated. This is what eventually leads Zareth to the Great Library of Nasus, a collection of all the world's known information curated by scholar-turned-ascended Nasus, the curator of the sands. This is where Zareth would first meet Azir, who favored and became friends with the young slave, and even with it being forbidden, gave him his name Zareth, which means one who shares, as Azir had some trouble with complex grammar, and even though it can mean death for a slave to speak to royalty, he decided to try to help Azir anyway. These two would become the best of friends, staying close to one another always, reading old texts and scrolls in the pursuit of knowledge, with Zareth learning all he possibly could, with the advantage of his new friend being the son of the Emperor, in the efforts of one day achieving his one true dream, to be a free man. And as you will soon learn, there is nothing Zareth won't do to gain his freedom. On one fateful day, the Emperor's caravan would be ambushed by assassins. Azir, fortunate enough at the time to have Zareth by his side, would be saved from the assassin who went after him, and soon all the assassins would fall. But so would all the Emperor's sons, all but Azir. Azir, being saved by Zareth, asked his father to reward his slave. But believing a slave to be so far beneath him, the Emperor didn't even consider it. Even so, Azir swore that one day him and Zareth would be as brothers. So Azir is the only heir of the Emperor, and Zareth is his right-hand man. Pretty solid. Everything should be peachy now, right? Right? Wrong. It doesn't matter that Azir is the Emperor's only living heir. The Emperor hated Azir, and even wished he had died in place of his more favored sons. Harsh, but not surprising. The Emperor wasn't exactly a good guy, as he let his empire fall into a state of chaos and paranoia, as he murdered any and all who he even suspected of treason, all while trying to conceive another heir so he could have his son killed and place his newborn as heir. Yeah, not a good guy. Though the Emperor's wife wouldn't be able to conceive a child, as Zareth, under the orders of Azir, would go on to uncover any knowledge he could attain to support the young heir to the throne, delving into every tomb, crypt, or ancient library to gather knowledge and magical powers. Anyone who said anything about it were fated to be dispatched by Zareth among a multitude of fashions, and so he used his newfound knowledge to corrupt any child the queen bore within the womb. Though all this was unbeknownst to Azir. I told you, this guy will do anything to be free, but at this point it's quite clear freedom isn't his only goal. Eventually, despite Zareth's efforts, the queen would finally birth a child, and as any man frustrated at his failures to murder children would do, blew the queen's chambers to pieces with a lightning storm, killing her and her child. It's said that the king went mad in grief of his loss and took his own life, though there were tales of the emperor and his guards being burned alive and found as nothing but charred corpses. Azir would finally be crowned emperor and be able to end slavery in Shurima, and once Azir took on his new position, Zareth awaited his freedom, but that freedom did not come, and any push for the matter from Zareth would be deflected by the new emperor. Zareth took this as a betrayal, watching someone who he once regarded as friend go on to conquer and expand his empire as his father did before him, believing him to be no better as well. But unbeknownst to Zareth, Azir had secret grand plans to end the slavery in Shurima, as it was no easy feat to overturn 1,000 years of tradition, as many of the noble houses of Shurima were built on the foundation of slavery. He decided to keep this a secret from Zareth, as there could be no word of his plans to ever become public knowledge. This was a pretty bad decision, as we will come to know. Zareth did not defy Azir, and continued to help him conquer new lands and defend him from political enemies, but he no longer did so in the interest of his friend, but rather in the interest of his plans to steal the empire from under Azir's nose. He would do this by planting the idea in Azir's head that he must become one of the Ascended, and by doing so he would be able to conquer the entire world. Zareth did this because he planned to betray Azir, and at the time of Ascension he would kill the Emperor and take his place to become Ascended himself. Azir agreed in Zareth's plan for him to become Ascended, and despite the refusal and advice of the Sun Priests, Azir demanded that he go through the Ascension ritual, going so far as to threaten those who would refuse him of Ascension to be killed. Zareth had planned everything out, even tricking the only two known Ascended beings, Nasus and Renekton, to miss the day's events, by having them sent to deal with the powerful fire spirit. As Azir approached the sun disk, ready to be ascended, he turned to Zareth, his most trusted advisor, his best friend, the man who helped and protected him at every turn. He turned to Zareth, and he freed him. He freed him and every slave in his vast empire. He embraced Zareth and named him his eternal brother. He kept his promise and his oath. But it was too late. To Zareth, too much had already been done for him to turn back now, and as Azir stepped upon the sun disk, in tears, Zareth blasted him away and burned him to ash. He used his magic to force the Sun Priest to continue the ritual, but the ritual was not meant for Zareth. The unleashed force of the sun's power brought mass destruction to the Empire. As Riot put it, the unbound power of the sun all but destroyed Shurima, sundering its temples and bringing ruination upon the city. Azir's people were consumed in a terrifying conflagration as the desert rose up to claim the city. The sun disk fell, and an empire built by generations of emperors was undone in a single day. Zareth had become ascended, but in his betrayal lost everything and became a twisted being of pure magical energy. In the ensuing aftermath, Nasus and Renekton had returned to see Shurima falling, and throughout an intense battle of Ascended, Renekton sacrificed himself and locked himself with Zareth within the Tomb of the Emperors, where they would stay, only to be released by the blood of the Emperor. Well, that's it for the story of ancient Shurima. I'll be sure to delve further into Nasus and Renekton's lore in the future, but please leave a like and subscribe, and tune in next time as we delve into the frozen wastes of the Freljord. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.